iwájú la mọ̀ wá sí ní gbogbo àgbáyé ọmọ Odùduwà kí ló wá dé o. ọmọ aláṣọ tó wá wá kísà ọmọ ẹlẹ́ran tó tún wá ń jẹ̀bù. ẹ̀wọ̀n ọmọ onílé tó ń sùn tàbí ẹ̀rù àsìkò ti tó a ò fẹ́ mọ́ o. ẹjẹ́ lọ́rọ̀ kan lẹ́nu káṣọ ń gbogbo papọ̀ ká má ṣe ra wa lọ́mọ ìyá Haúsá. ìṣọ̀kan Yorùbá òmìnira Yorùbá ọwọ́ èmi àti ẹ̀ṣà ló wà. ìṣọ̀kan Yorùbá òmìnira Yorùbá ló jẹ́ wá lógún àsìkò ti tó. ìṣọ̀kan Yorùbá òmìnira Yorùbá ló jẹ́ wá lógún àsìkò ti tó. àìrìnpọ̀ ọmọ ejò ló jẹ́ ejò níyà ló ń fi ikú pa wọ́n òbí o. tọ́ka bá ṣíwájú o tèrè tẹ̀lé tí paramọ́lẹ̀ tó tún bá tẹ̀lé. ọlọ́dẹ náà dá tá a dojú kọ wọ́n ẹ̀tẹ́ ló máa bá bọ̀. tọmọ Ọ̀yọ́ bá tẹ̀ lọ́mọ Ògùn tọmọ Oǹdó bá tẹ̀ lọ́mọ Èkìtì tọmọ Kogi àtọmọ Kwara tán bá fún ṣọ̀kan ohun gbogbo máa dẹ̀rọ̀. gbogbo ẹgbẹ́ ta ní pátá tó jẹ́gbẹ́ Yorùbá tí bá ní máa dàgọ́ ilé aṣù ilé àmọ́ tó dàpọ̀ gan tó jọ́pọ̀ Odùduwà torí oríṣiríṣi ẹgbẹ́ ó wà. òmìnira ló yẹ wá ó dẹ̀ máa tẹ̀ wá lọ́wọ́ tá bá ṣe ra wa lóṣooṣù ọwọ́. ìṣọ̀kan Yorùbá òmìnira Yorùbá o ló jẹ́ wá lógún òwe ilé wíná. ìṣọ̀kan Yorùbá òmìnira Yorùbá o ló jẹ́ wá lógún àsìkò. Ṣàníjì lórúkọ tèmi òkú Yorùbá òmìnira Yorùbá ló jẹ́ wá lógún àsìkò ti tó.
Like, comment, and share.
Ladies and gentlemen, the national anthem of the newly formed Odùduwà Nation.
Agbega, káàbọ̀ sá sí dáadáa lẹ́dẹ́ gbogbo ará òkè ọ̀hún kọ́.
àbúrò dáadáa ni o ẹ̀yin náà ń kọ́ ṣé mo bá yín dáadáa.
sẹ́ẹ̀rì ẹ̀gbọ́n ó tiẹ̀ dá eléyìí tẹ́ ẹ wá yìí tẹ́ ẹ bá ti ń lọ a ó jọ mọ́ ọ lọ padà ni o. ẹ wò ó ká mọ́ purọ́ ìlú yìí ò dáa gbogbo ẹ̀ sì ti sú mi pátápátá.
àbúrò kò rọrùn bó ṣe ń wí yẹn o àti wípé orí bẹ́ẹ̀ kọ́ ni ògùn orí fífọ́ sísá lọ kọ́ ni ọ̀nà àbáyọ bí kì í ṣe wípé kí àwa ọ̀dọ́ Yorùbá ká parapọ̀ sọ̀mọ̀dọ̀ kan láti gba ara wa kúrò lóko ẹrú.
Eba orí bíbẹ́ kọ́ lóògùn orí fífọ́ mu gbà la fi ṣàgbékalẹ̀ Yorùbá Nation Youth website fún gbogbo ọ̀dọ́ Yorùbá pé ká darapọ̀ ṣọ̀kan lágbàáyé. ní báyìí ìforúkọsílẹ̀ ti ń lọ lọ́wọ́lọ́wọ́ a sì ti ń wá àwọn aṣojú jákèjádò àgbáyé èyí tó lóyìnbó ń pè ní coordinator Yorùbá Nation Youth website. láìpẹ́ láì jìnnà la ó bẹ̀rẹ̀ ètò ìdánilẹ́kọ̀ọ́ nípa bá a ṣe ń ṣe àti bá a ṣe ń lo drone. ó tàwọn ọ̀kan òjọ̀kan ètò empowerment gbogbo tá a ti là kalẹ̀ bí ètò iṣẹ́ àgbẹ̀ ìrànwọ́ fún àwọn ọmọléèwé tó kù díẹ̀ fún káàtó ètò ìkọ́sẹ́ ọ̀fẹ́ tó ń tirisẹ́ ìgbàlódé táwọn fi ṣiṣẹ́ lọ́fẹ̀ẹ́ ti ká ran àwọn ọmọ tó bá lẹ́bùn tá a mọ̀ sí talent lọ́wọ́ gbogbo ẹ̀ fún ìrọ̀rùn àwa ara wa láti darapọ̀ mọ́ Yorùbá Nation Youth tàbí tẹ́ bá fẹ́ jẹ́ coordinators nílùú tẹ́ bá wà bíi Europe Asia Canada America Australia bó sì ṣe pé yín nìkan tẹ́ bá fẹ́ fi ràn wá lọ́wọ́ bí ilẹ̀ tá a fi ń dákọ nílé ọ́fíìsì nílùú tẹ́ bá wà owó àti bẹ́ẹ̀ bẹ́ẹ̀ lọ ẹ kàn sí wa látòrí www.yorubanationyouthwebsite.org bákan náà ní ẹ lè pè tàbí kẹ́ WhatsApp Homeland Coordinator lórí +234 703 717 3355 tàbí kẹ́pẹ́ Prophet Ayọ̀délé Ológunlolúwa tí wọ́n jẹ́ Yorùbá Nation Youth Leader in all diaspora lórí +1 803 846 1116. pẹ̀lú Yorùbá Nation Youth website yìí ìrọ̀rùn ti dé.
ẹ̀ka
a kí wa wípé ẹ kú òun lónìí a kí Elédùmarè ọba tó ṣẹ̀dá èmi àti yín a kí ọba ọ̀hún torí pé onìkan ni ọba tí ọpẹ́ àti ìyìn wa tó tọ́ fún lónìí. mo kí ọmọdé bẹ́ẹ̀ ni mo kí àgbàlagbà mo kí ọkùnrin bẹ́ẹ̀ ni mo kí obìnrin mo kí onílé bẹ́ẹ̀ ni mo kí àlejò mo kí gbogbo ẹ̀yin mùsùlùmí pé assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. bẹ́ẹ̀ ni mo kí ẹ̀yin kan pé kí orí ọ̀fẹ́ Jésù Kristi tí Olúwa wa kó máa bẹ pẹ̀lú ẹnìkọ̀ọ̀kan wa. mo kí àwọn ẹlẹ́sìn kàbáláyé náà pé gbogbo àtọ́ àsúre ìwòrìwò fún kò ṣẹbọ kò ṣe mùsùlùmí kò ṣe kìrìsìtẹ́nì kò ṣe nǹkan ṣùgbọ́n gbà pé nìkan bẹ tí ń jẹ́ Ọlọ́run tó ń tọ́ òun. mo kí òun náà wípé gbogbo kóòtù náà má gbàgbọ́ lẹ̀ kó máa bá ẹnìkọ̀ọ̀kan wa. lónìí orúkọ tèmi ò yípadà Omoboriowo ayé kò tọ́ òun náà ni èmi ń jẹ́. lónìí a tún ti dé lórí ètò wa tí a mọ̀ sí ìmọ̀ràn àgbà pẹ̀lú bàbá wa Dr. Chief Olúṣọlá Òní. kí ni àkọlé tòní lórí ìmọ̀ràn àgbà? àkọlé tòní lórí ìmọ̀ràn àgbà ó náà ni tó ní ṣe pẹ̀lú Yorùbá. kí ni tó ń ṣẹlẹ̀ sí àwa Yorùbá náà? kí ni tó dé sí àwa Yorùbá náà? kí ló dé tí àwa Yorùbá tí a ń ṣe orò bíi èwe? kí ló dé tí àwa Yorùbá tí a kọ̀ tá a mọwọ́ ọ̀tún yàtọ̀ sí tòsì? kí ló dé tí àwa Yorùbá àti àgbà àti ọmọdé kí ló dé tí gbogbo wa sùn tí a sì kọrí síbi kan náà? Yorùbá wọn ní ọ̀gẹ̀dẹ̀ ń bàjẹ́ à ń sọ wípé níṣe ni ó ń pọ́n. ǹjẹ́ ibi tí ìran Yorùbá pẹ̀lú ọgbọ́n ìmọ̀ àti òye tọ́lọ́run fún wa pẹ̀lú ọgbọ́n ìmọ̀ àti òye àti rìnrìn káàkiri wa tá a ti rìn dé láyé ṣe ibi tó yẹ ká wà rèé ṣe ibi tó wà lẹ́yìn àwọn kan ló ń bẹ́ẹ̀ yìí ó náà ni a ó mọ yànnàná pẹ̀lú bàbá wa lónìí. màá fẹ́ kí bàbá wa kan bá wa kí àwọn aráalé. bàbá ẹ bá mi kí àwọn aráalé àwọn tí wọ́n ń wò wá.
ẹ káalẹ́ o, mo kí àgbà mo kí ọmọdé mo kí ọkùnrin mo kí obìnrin mo kí akọ mo kí abo. Thank you very much for joining me again today. Without you, it would be pointless making any broadcast. So thank you very much for your enthusiasm. Thank you very much for your feedback, which has been very enthusing. And as long as you are prepared to listen to me, I will continue to do the broadcast. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Now, today I don't normally like to talk so much about philosophy, but today I'm going to talk about a topic that has been troubling me for a while. And the question is this: What is wrong with us Yoruba people? What is wrong with us? If you remember, on the 16th of January just passed, Ibadan was bombed. The Oyo State governor, with no more than a cursory investigation, immediately diagnosed a mining accident. Immediately. No investigations whatsoever. That does appear that there's nothing that Nigeria could throw at the Yoruba that would cause the Yoruba to resist or revolt or even think. We Yoruba, we meet every atrocity with a shrug of the shoulder, or we turn to God to provide deliverance. But actually, when you look at it seriously, when you look at the physical construct of Nigeria, Nigeria could not defeat the Yoruba on the battlefield. If there was a fight today, Nigeria couldn't defeat us. The Fulani could not defeat us on the battlefield either. So what's the problem? What is our problem? The problem is not really apathy. It's not apathy. This is what the Yorubas call I bikita. There's no question that we are not apathetic, in the sense that we can't stop talking about how badly we are being treated in Nigeria. So the question of apathy does not arise. What it is this. We Yoruba, we are docile. This is what the Yoruba call Irorun or Irorun. We are docile. And it is important that we distinguish between apathy and docile, because the treatment is different. You can cure apathy with awareness. You can do a lot of campaigns, go from town to town, from village to village, from school to school, or whatever. You can use that. You can use awareness to cure apathy. How do you cure docile? What do you do to cure docile? My view is that we need to start by identifying the cause or the causes. Why are we docile? And there are probably two conditions, and I will talk about each one of them in turn. The first one is what I call British overlordship. Actually, it is, I didn't coin that phrase. That phrase was coined by Awolowo a long time ago, who was saying, in terms of British overlordship, that it was that kept the facade of Nigerian unity. In the old Yoruba land, power was owned by the people, and it was exercised by the people for the benefit of the people. That's how the governance of Yoruba land was organized. The power was owned by the people. It was exercised by the people for the benefit of the people. But over the period of 46 years that the British were in charge, the British conditioned us Yoruba to accept that power was owned and exercised not for the benefit of the people, but for the benefit of the Queen, their monarch, and our officials. Let me say that again. When the British were in charge here, they conditioned us to accept that power was owned and exercised not for the benefit of the Yoruba people, but for the benefit of the Queen of England and for the benefit of our officials. Power was owned by the British. And how did they acquire this power? They acquired the power corruptly. They either used the force of arms or they used subterfuge. The British showed no qualms at all in the nakedness with which they exercised that power. Absolutely no shame at all. No humanity, no shame. If the people, including the Oba, who was the Yoruba ruler, if the people, anyone did not do what the British official wanted, the British would punish him with deprivation of his liberty, or sometimes even with death. This is what is the whole essence of gunboat diplomacy. Or they do what they call expedition. They will go into a town and kill the Oba if it doesn't agree with whatever it is they wanted. The British were not accountable to the Yoruba at all for whatever they did when under British overlordship. They extorted tax from the Yoruba. They spent that tax money without the consent of the Yoruba taxpayer. The British signed treaties with Yoruba rulers, with our Oba, that they had no intention of honoring, and they did not honor these treaties. In fact, the 1888 Britain-Yoruba Treaty is still, as we speak, extant. It is still legal today as we speak here. The British introduced into Yoruba land a rigged system of justice. We had our own laws, but they put their own rigged system of justice where they can accuse you of wrongdoing, but when you go to their court, you are just a spectator. You are not allowed to properly, personally participate in your own case, because you have to be represented by a lawyer. If you are accused, you are just a spectator. You are not allowed to personally get involved in your own case. And where before there were states, city-states, we were organized, Yoruba land was organized as city-states, autonomous in their own affairs, and they conducted whatever it is they wanted to do, their affairs, they conducted it by themselves. They were autonomous. So what did the British do? The British put an overarching super state. So you have Yoruba city-states, which is the way we were organized. The most democratic system of organizing a country was city-states looking after themselves. But the British now superimposed on that a super state. And they started first as Protectorate of Southern Nigeria, which they did, I think, in 1890. Then they weren't satisfied with that. In 1914, they amalgamated Nigeria. The British did not ask or obtain consent from the Yoruba people for any of these things that they did. Indeed, the British used the amalgamation primarily to rob the Yoruba land of its resources. That's why they did the amalgamation. Yoruba land was rich, the North was poor. They were spending money to maintain the North. So they decided that if they amalgamated the North and South, they would be able to take money from Yoruba land to spend in the North, which is what they did, and which it continues till today. The British imposed half a dozen or so constitutions on Yoruba land that did not allow the Yoruba to meaningfully participate in government until 1954 or thereabout. That's 40 years after the amalgamation of Nigeria. They were writing constitutions for us in which we did not participate, which excluded us from participating in government for a whole 40, 46 years. Then, when they started thinking about handing over to Nigerians, the first thing they did was to rig the 1959 election. They rigged it in such a way that Northern Nigeria had the larger number of representatives. And remember, that was Nigeria's very first national election. So the very first national election that was done in Nigeria was rigged by the British. They even rigged the census so that up to now, Nigeria does not have a genuine census. We don't know how many we are. Everything is a guess. Then finally, As the British left in 1960, they didn't just leave and left us to it. No, they set up a system which transferred their colonial way of doing things to an indigenous colonial way of doing things. So, what are the consequences of the British overlordship for the Yoruba people? What are the consequences? The consequences were, we were conditioned to believe that we had no power, that we were powerless. We were conditioned to believe that we were powerless. They conditioned us to believe or to accept that we could be governed by outsiders without our consent. Because the British were outsiders. So they conditioned us to accept governance by outsiders without our own consent. They conditioned us to believe or to accept that our lives could be determined by outsiders, and that there was nothing we could do about it. So outsiders will determine the way we live, and we couldn't do anything about it. Outsiders could be as corrupt as they like, and the Yoruba could do nothing about it. So that's how they conditioned us under the British overlordship. The second potential cause of our being docile is the Nigerian overlordship. So the British finished their overlordship, they handed it over to Nigerian overlordship. Now, from 1954, when we had self-government, the Yoruba had a lot of optimism. Really, the place was buzzing, everybody was happy. Because although the British overlordship was still there, the insiders, the Yoruba people themselves, were effectively in charge. We were effectively in charge. For the first time since 1914, the Yoruba saw overarching leadership provided for them by Obafemi Awolowo, Chief Awolowo, as a means, people who used power, the people's power, for the benefit of the people. And I remember the slogan for the 1959 election, life more abundant. In 1954, thereabouts, when we got self-government, life was really more abundant. Because then Awolowo and Co could think about the future for the Yoruba people. Free education, free health for children. The television service, which actually was brought into place to educate the public. The television service was not for fun as it is now. The aim was to educate the public. So you had free education for your children, and then you had the television service and the WNBS, WNTV in those days to educate the masses because they believed in education and education. And then, of course, the economic system was buoyant. So during the time of self-government, where the Yorubas looked after themselves, we prospered. We were not docile. We were not apathetic. We were moving forward. We were doing things for ourselves. Then came independence and the emergence of the Nigerian overlordship. That was it. That was the end of all our optimism. Because now, outsiders determine the fate of the Yoruba. During self-government, before self-government, during the colonial period, before self-government, outsiders determined the fate of the Yoruba. During self-government, we determined our own fate. After self-government, when independence came, we were no longer able to determine our fate. Outsiders now determine our fate. Because suddenly, we Yoruba found ourselves to be minority in Nigeria. We were again powerless. Because what happened was that the other two regions, Eastern region and Northern region, they ganged up on us. the East and North, the Eastern region and the Northern region, they colluded to imprison Awolowo. They didn't just stop there in order to break the power, the development of Yoruba land. They broke Yoruba land, they broke Western region into two, into West and Midwest. The Midwest at that time was economically not viable, but they still created the Midwest. And then came 1966. That was when the outsiders totally took control, completely. The Northerners organized things in such a way that they no longer needed to collude with the Easterners anymore. They didn't need the Eastern region anymore. And the Northerners have gone on since then to do exactly what they want. And again, we Yoruba, we find ourselves in the minority, even though we are the largest. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. We are the largest ethnic group in Nigeria. We have the largest population in Nigeria. Let everybody deceive themselves, whatever it is. The Yoruba, we are the largest ethnic group in Nigeria. In spite of that, we are made to feel as if we are the minority. The consequences of the Nigerian overlordship is similar to the consequences of the British overlordship, in the sense that we now find ourselves powerless yet again. But where the Nigerian overlordship was more pernicious and more destructive than the British overlordship was in the bastardization of the Yoruba culture. They have tried to destroy our culture completely. And I'll just give you an example before I end my talk here. I'll give you an example in a minute. Our culture, the Yoruba culture, was based on the philosophy of respect, owo. Respect. That's the basis of Yoruba culture. The philosophy behind Omoluabi is respect, owo. We were taught from childhood to give respect to elders, to give respect to the competent. It's almost intuitive. Because of my wide beard, when I go to Nigeria, when people see me, automatically you are called Baba. That is giving respect. According respect. The person you are respecting does not ask you for it. It doesn't demand it of you. You respect him. You respect your father. If you're an apprentice, you respect your master. You respect the Babalawo because he's a specialist in his own field. You respect the Baashegun because he's a specialist in his own field. So you respect age and you also respect competence. But what the Nigerian overlordship did was to replace respect with deference. Deference in Yoruba is Iforibale. People who don't know what deference means. It's Iforibale. Deference is totally different from respect. Respect is given. Nobody demands it. Deference is demanded. Nobody gives it. You don't give it voluntarily. It is demanded. And I'll give you an example. When Obasanjo at a meeting demanded that all the Obas present should stand up for him, he wasn't asking for respect, he was asking for deference. Obasanjo, just like the colonial officers of the past, perceived himself to be above the Oba. That's why he asked them to stand up for him. It wasn't a question of respect, because respect is given. They will give you respect if he deserved respect. But what he was asking for was deference. Iforibale for me. That's what he was asking. Another example is the junior staff who the Oga, the boss says, take my wife shopping in the official car or take my children to school in the morning, the driver was not respecting the Oga. No, no. He was being deferential. The same thing goes with the when the minister says, deposit government money in my account. The man who did it, the civil servant who transferred that money, wasn't doing it out of respect. There's no respect involved. He was doing it out of deference. And this is how Nigeria had destroyed the Yoruba culture. So to conclude, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. To conclude, docile is a psychological state. It's a psychological condition. That's what docile is. And people who know about Pavlov's experiment will understand what I'm talking about. Conditional reflex. People who understand, who have studied physiology or psychology will understand what I mean. We Yoruba, we are docile because of the conditioning under two overlordship. I've talked about the British overlordship and I've talked about the Nigerian overlordship. That's why we are docile, because those conditions, those environments, if you like, conditioned us to be docile. The problem with being docile is this: you subjugate yourself. They don't need to subjugate you. They don't need to point gun in your head. Because you are so docile, you subjugate yourself. And that is what has happened to us Yoruba. Being docile has caused us to subjugate ourselves. Docile is a psychological state. Don't anybody who tells you that it's going to be easy to get rid of it, people make all sorts of suggestions and so on and so forth. Docile is a psychological state. As with Pavlovian experiments, the only way to end it is to remove the Yoruba from the Nigeria overlordship. You need to take Nigeria out of the environment before we can be cured of our docile. Nothing else will do. We have to get out of Nigeria before we can change the conditioning. Thank you very much.
Ẹ ṣé gan ni dáàdì, ẹ ṣé àdúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ yín. Èmi ní ìbéèrè méjì tí màá bí ń bì because ìbéèrè mi dá lórí question tí topic tó ní wípé what is happen to us Yorubas. Then the first question ó máa dá lórí ibi tẹ́ mẹ́nubà, which is amalgamation in 1914. Then the question ó máa lọ báyìí: as earlier as 1898, the British considered to combine the three protectorates, which is Western Protectorate, North and South Protectorate together, in order to reduce the burden on them based on not issue. But there is a statement which was written by Lord Lugar, which I'll ask you, why is it mentioned that content, that sentence? It said, a marriage between the rich wife. A marriage between the rich wife of substance, which is mean the South, and the poor husband, the North, will lead to happy life for both. Now the question is this: they know as far back as 1898 that they are use a force to join the rich South with poor North together in order to reduce the burden on them based on the influence of the North. That is why he said and I quoted that a marriage between the rich wife, which is mean the South, and poor husband that is not, only will lead to happy life of both. Now, my question is this, is it true that marriage gives us the happiness the Lord Lugard mentioned in his book? Etimutsa.
It wasn't only Lugard who said it. Actually, Lord Harcourt, who was the colonial secretary, said something similar as well. I think what is missed, or what people really don't.
Yeah, this was Lord Lugard in 1897.
Yes,
From the London Times articles.
Yes, Lord Harcourt, who was Port Harcourt is named after him, also said a similar thing. Now, what people actually miss out of what you have just quoted is that they used the North as the husband, all right? The North is the husband, and the South is the wife. And in British culture, like our culture, the husband is the head of the family.
Yes.
So they used, so already, partly because Lugard started life as the governor in the North, so they already decided right at the beginning that they were going to, that although Nigeria was lopsided, they were going to make the North the dominant area in Nigeria. They made that decision. Now, what you are quoting about 1898, we always talk about 1914, but actually, the order in council that created Nigeria was in December, I think, 1898. So they decided to amalgamate Nigeria. What Lugard did was to proclaim it. I think they revised the colony of Nigeria order in 1913 as well. Then there was a revision in 1913 where they merged everything together. Not only that, Lugard took part of Yoruba land and added it to the North. Before, in fact, the governor of the Southern Protectorate disagreed and argued that places like Ilorin, Bida were Yoruba land and should not be part of the North. So right from the beginning, they had decided that the North was going to be superior to the rest of the country. So not only did they take a bit of northern Yoruba land and added it to northern Nigeria, they also created false population. They created false population for the North. And that's why till today, we cannot have a proper census in Nigeria, because the only time they've had a census, which was 1963, I think, it showed that the South had more population than the North, as you will expect. But they buried that census. And since then, we have never been able to have a census. So the answer to your question was that they had already decided that the North was going to be dominant. And if you read Lord Lugard's report to Parliament, I think it's dated 1920, if I remember correctly. I think it's paragraph 5, where he talked about why amalgamation. And it was clear, the first thing was finance. And it said bluntly there that the North was broke, the South had surplus money. Why shouldn't they use South's money to prop up the North? Right from the beginning, the philosophy of the British was to rob Peter to pay Paul. That was it. And we still have it. In fact, when oil was first discovered and they were first mining oil, the northern emirs insisted that they should have 50% of the income. They said if they didn't have 50%, they were going to go away. The British agreed. The British agreed for them to have 50% of the revenue from the oil. That was the beginning of what Nigeria is today, where the North takes what it hasn't got. That's how it started. So when we look back at, so again, you are reinforcing the point that I'm making about being docile, in the sense that you just find that you are powerless every time. You know, your money, they steal it to give it to the North. They're still doing it now. The whole political system is lopsided. It is still being done today. If it wasn't for the fact that the East decided to collude with the North to destroy the West, Nigeria's story would probably have been better than it is today. The North will not be as backward as it is today. If Zeke had not gone with the North, or even if they had formed a government of national unity, you're coming to independence. This was something new. After 40 years of colonial rule, you are becoming independent. The most sensible thing will have been, look, you guys, let us come together. Let us govern this country together. But then they went and did their deal somewhere. If I come back to my conclusion again, we Yoruba were docile simply because of our experience. And this is where the Pavlovian similarity is. You know, people who understand the Pavlov experiment will explain it to you. That we have been conditioned to be docile. And the problem with conditioning is that it is not something that is easy to kill. You know, people will tell you, oh, well, you can desensitize, you can, for example, in order to persuade a civil servant from putting the government money into the minister's account, you could say any civil servant that did that will go to prison for life. So that itself is a deterrent, so that the effect of deference to the minister is nullified by the deterrent. But the trouble is that Nigeria is not a place where that's going to work, because they will always find a way to corrupt whatever it is you're doing. So even if you said, oh, the guy in charge of the central bank runs the central bank as if it's his own personal bank. And today he's arguing, I don't know what his argument is. Instead of burying his head in shame, the same thing with the girl who said to have stolen billions of naira. She says, prosecute me and heads will roll. Let her head roll first. Let us see. Let her go to prison first. Let it take every one of them to prison. So those are the two ways you break conditioning. You can desensitize, or you can provide what is called aversion therapy. But you can't do it with a population of people. There are experiments that were done. I can't remember his name now. Who started in a class that said, when I say now, you all stand up. And he was doing that now, and it became conditioned that every time he said now, everybody stood up. But the problem was that as time went on with his lecture, 20 minutes later, the number of people that were standing up was getting less and less and less and less, although there are still people standing up. So you couldn't kill the Yoruba docile by using these psychological methods. It's not going to work. The only way to break the situation we are in now is to leave Nigeria and we start afresh. That's the only way to do it. So when we say what is wrong with the Yoruba people, we know what is wrong. And we now know that the only cure for it is to leave Nigeria. Have you got any more questions?
Yeah, just only one question more, because the topic said, what is wrong with Yoruba people? Even though you said the only issue that we can solve this problem is to leave that Nigerian. Then I will just put another one, let me say a painful from Obafemi Awolowo before the election in 1951. Because said what is wrong with Yoruba, and we are discussed about Yoruba today, and what has been wrong to Yoruba, being betraying ourselves, being not be truthful to ourselves, being backbiting ourselves. The same thing applicable to Awolowo in 1951 during the parliamentary election. Then I just wanted to narrate this content. Awolowo said when there is issue between Azikiwe being governed Ibadan, being governed Yoruba, which is supposed to use Alhaji Adegoke Adelabu as its running mate with Awolowo. Yes, Penkeleme at that time. That is the Lion of Ibadan. Then the question, the Awolowo said, I quote Awolowo, as he said, I am not worried if Action Group lost the election, but I am worried about the Yoruba generation to come and what we will say to our generation for allowing Azikiwe, an Igbo man, to rule us in our own land, considering that we Yorubas, we are exposed to the Western civilization and Christianity before Igbo. If you look at this sentence, you can see that Awolowo, to me, Awolowo was solely on that there is no way out. He knows that if he didn't mention this statement, the Yoruba will betray him, and the Azikiwe will be the premier of Western region. That is why he called all the Obas and mentioned this statement. What is your take concerning this statement?
Okay, I'll just make a little bit of a correction before I go on to the answer. When people talk as if the NCNC had the largest number of seats in the Western region, it isn't true. The Western region had so many little parties. Even in Ibadan, where Penkeleme constituency was, there were 6 seats. He was only one of 6 seats. The other 5 seats, they weren't interested in Azikiwe coming to rule Yoruba land either. So there's always a misinterpretation of what actually happened. Unlike in the East and in the North, in the West, there were multiple political parties. And what happened, this nonsense about people crossing carpet, was simply that those small parties decided to go with Action Group. That was it. Neither the NCNC nor the Action Group had enough numbers to form the government. But the smaller parties preferred to go with Awolowo than with Azikiwe. And the reason why they did that is what I said right at the beginning. Life more abundant. Awolowo had a vision of what he would do or what they should do, which was, as we said, free primary education, free health care for young people, that people like me benefited from. I mean, I used to say that how many injections, vaccinations I've had at Jericho in Ibadan, how many times from school that you've been marched to go and get whether it's BCG or whatever it is they were giving us in those days. He had a vision. Bodija that you are talking about, these are concepts that this is how people should live. Bodija, Ikeja Estate, and so on and so forth. So he had a vision. What Azikiwe represented was just power. He wanted power. Awolowo had something totally different. And that is one of the disasters that we have had in Yoruba land, that we have never had anybody else that has the same vision as Awolowo. The man had a vision. This is the direction. This is where we should be going. So when people talk about crossing carpet, it was nothing of the sort. There are too many. There were half a dozen or so political parties that won election in Western region, and they formed a coalition. That was all that happened. And Awolowo was right that why should Zik, who had won election in the East, who should have been premier in the East, why should he decide to come to the West to come and be premier? He had already won the election in the East. He was already premier designate. Why didn't he say he wants to go and rule the North? And in any case, the NCNC that Azikiwe was heading was a Yoruba party originally. So when you look at the story of Nigeria and the Yoruba story, I keep coming back to the same thing, to that word docile. I keep coming back to the same word time and time again. Even though I've looked at it everywhere, I still come back to the same word, docile. And I really cannot find a word that describes it better than that. I mean, I've translated it to be irorun. I mean, the dictionary that I use was produced in, I think, 1845. And the reason why I use that dictionary is because it was nearer to the truth. That is, it was nearer to the people. For example, in that dictionary, the word Oluwa does not exist. But when you look at the dictionary that the CMS wrote in the 1920s, I think they wrote their own dictionary, the word Oluwa appears. So between the two dictionaries, there's a change. I mean, I think because CMS was a Christian organization, so they put a lot of invented words. But when you look at the original dictionary prepared by missionaries in the 1840s, including Ajayi Crowther himself in the 1840s, it's totally different from the dictionary that the CMS produced. They were completely, there are many more words in the CMS dictionary and many more additions. But to go back to the point you are making, Awolowo was able to wake us up out of our docility, out of our being docile. Remember what I said? There was optimism in those days. When Awolowo and Co. first came in the scene, there's so much optimism because he could project a vision to the people that your life was going to be better. You tell me which Nigerian politician, which Nigerian military leader has ever had the same vision as Awolowo? None. None at all. They are all just there. This is power. That's it. We've got power. That's it. That's what we were saying on Saturday. That there's a bomb in Ibadan. Something that you had never seen before. Something that has never happened before. You don't declare a state of emergency. You say, oh, it was caused by miners. How do you know? How do you know? You declare a state of emergency. That's the first step. That's the first rational step. But because we are so docile, whether it's those who call themselves our leaders or those of us who are just ordinary people, we are so docile that the governor couldn't think. He couldn't think that, oh, this is so unusual. It's required to be dealt with in an unusual manner, not, things as usual. It needed to be dealt with in a completely separate, different manner. You declare a state of emergency, and then you find out why. Then you know how many people's houses have been destroyed, who has died, and so on and so forth. You just make it up. That is the effect of being docile. Remember, I said it's a psychological problem. It's a psychological condition. So subconscious, so it affects. You are not sitting down there and say, oh, I'm docile today. No, it's there. It's in your brain. It's in your subconscious. And it makes you react to things in such bizarre manner. And everything is like that. You look at the last election, for example, Afenifere supports Peter Obi. On what basis? Why would you be a Yoruba party, a Yoruba organization, not party, a Yoruba organization, and you will support an outsider to rule over Yoruba land? The same with Obasanjo, who is supposed to be Yoruba. You have to be intellectually dumb. You have to be intellectually dumb to think that somebody, an outside, will rule Yoruba land better than the Yoruba themselves. That's just, I mean, the stupidity is mind-boggling. The stupidity is mind-boggling. And this is the problem of being docile. When you are docile, you make decisions that are not in your own best interest. I hope I've made that point very, very clear. That it is because we Yoruba are docile that we have subjugated ourselves. Nobody can put a gun to our head. Kò sí bàbá olúwẹ̀ ní Nàìjíríà tó lè sọ pé òun máa defeat àwa Yorùbá on a battlefield. Kò sí bàbá olúwẹ̀. Kò sí olúwẹ̀ tó lè sọ pé òun máa defeat wa on a battlefield. People, I get people sending text to me and all this sort of things saying, where will we find the guns? Where did they find the guns? The same way as they found it, you find it. And I'm talking as somebody who's a pacifist. I'm a pacifist because I believe that we can defeat these people. We don't need a gun. We don't need guns to defeat them. We do not need guns to defeat Nigeria. What we require is to use this brain. We always tell ourselves, you use brain. It's what I call megaphone diplomacy. You need to make noise. Aruwo ati agogo. That's why I was saying on Saturday, we need to go back to the mega rallies. We need noise. We need people on the West to know what is happening to us. You bomb Ibadan. It's not, which news? Which news? They take it one day and it's the end of it. You look at it. You do that in, I don't know, Yugoslavia, the whole place, everybody will know about it. You do that in Israel, everybody knows about it. You do that in Yoruba land, and nobody cares because we don't care ourselves. People talk about Black Lives Matter. If Black lives don't matter to you, if Yoruba lives do not matter to you, why will it matter to anybody else? We're always complaining about the West does this, the West does that. If we ourselves don't care, if we ourselves don't regard our own lives as precious, as important, why should anybody else care? Why should they? The border is bombed. And so only 2 people died. These 2 human beings, innocent human beings, two died. And so you just shrug, well, only 2 people died. Only 2 people died. That's it. You know, when you look at the aerial picture, you can see the devastation. You can see the devastation over a substantial area, several houses. And the thing that comes out of the governor's mouth is, oh, it's a mining incident. So mining incident is what? It's something that happens every day. It's what we experience every day. That is what it's meant to be docile. You're docile. That's what it means. You subjugate yourselves. Nobody puts a gun to your head to subjugate you because it is a psychological situation. You subjugate yourself. Nobody needs to do anything. Yeah, I mean, people, this is not apathy. No, it's not apathy at all. Apathy, you can fix that. You know, because all you require is awareness campaign. But people are aware. The Yoruba people know they are suffering. To say they are not aware, they are aware that they are suffering. They are aware that there are some of us who are agitating for a Yoruba nation. It's not that they are not aware. What they are is docile. We've got this psychological baggage, and the only way that we can get rid of it, in my opinion, is to leave Nigeria. Any more questions? That's fine.
ti àtàrọ̀ àdúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ yín olódùmarè yóò bá wa sàn yín ní ẹ̀sẹ̀ ẹ̀yẹn wa tí ẹ̀ ń wò wá nílé bàbá náà ni ẹ ti ń gbóhùn wọn láti àtàrọ̀ yìí a sọ pé ètò yìí a ó máa fi àyè sílẹ̀ fún ẹnikẹ́ni láti béèrè ìbéèrè tàbí láti pè bí ètò yìí bí ó bá ṣe ń lọ ẹ jẹ́ kí n béèrè lọ́wọ́ àwọn tí wọ́n bá ń kọ̀wọ́ rìn lónìí bóyá a rí ẹnikẹ́ni tí ó ní ìbéèrè àwọn tí wọ́n wà nílé pẹ̀lú wa Israel Awunusi tó bá jẹ́ pé ẹ bá ní ìbéèrè pẹ̀lú bàbá àti Bọ́lá tí ẹ bá ní ìbéèrè pẹ̀lú iPhone ǹjẹ́ ní ìbéèrè wà tí fẹ́ bí ẹ lọ bàbá kó tó di pé a mú ètò tó ní wá sí òpin. Thank you so much.
ẹ ṣé sà àgbà yín adalẹ́ o.
Àmì o, thank you very much.
Èmi ò fi bẹ́ẹ̀ ní ìbéèrè bọ̀ mo kàn fẹ́ fi àfikún kún nǹkan táwọn bàbá wa sọ wípé nípa ìṣẹ̀lẹ̀ tó ṣẹlẹ̀ nìbàdàn because ẹni tó kàn ó kàn mí ó kàn ẹ̀jẹ̀ mi ó kàn Kenny Tolúwaṣẹ which is like ọmọ bíbí inú mi ó dùn mí inú egungun bí bàbá ṣe sọ wọ́n dẹ̀ wá sọ yẹpẹrẹ bẹ́ẹ̀ yẹn it's just illegal minor.
ó dùn àwa Omoboriowo foundation náà because ara wa náà ni wọ́n.
ó dùn mí mi ò lè gbé kúrò lára lálẹ́ nísìnyìí a fẹ́ release balloon fún Kenny wọ́n ti lọ síbẹ̀ bọ́ mi ò lè lọ ọmọ mi ni Kenny èmi ni mo gbé láti kékeré títí ó fi dàgbà. He's got a good soul and that life is just taken like that. Wọ́n wá sọ pé àwọn kan wà illegal miners tí illegal miners fi kó gbogbo adúrú nǹkan tó tó bẹ́ẹ̀ yẹn sí residential area tí kò dẹ̀ sẹ́nì kankan tí ó rí wọn tàbí tó mú wọn tàbí tó question wọn Me, I am still questioning. I'm not questioning you, sir. I'm questioning Nigeria government. Kí ló dé, kí la ṣe, kí la gbà lọ́wọ́ wọn? Tèmi ò jù bẹ́ẹ̀ yẹn lọ o. Ọlọ́run dẹ̀ jókòó sókè ó ń wo gbogbo wa náà.
Well, what I can say is that may the good Lord give those who have lost their lives, give them eternal rest. As I always say, with all these atrocities, when we have our own Yoruba nation, we will remember. When we have our own country, we will remember. We will establish monuments to people who have lost their lives in this struggle. Not only Abiola Bola Igiankwan, but Dr. Aborode, who was murdered by the Fulani for doing what? For having a cashew planted. The man who sold everything went back home to create a plantation, and they just butchered him like that. When we have our own nation, we shall remember all these things. We shall remember every single one of it when we have our own country. The good Lord will provide for those who have died. Thank you.
Ẹ ṣé bàbá, àwọn ìṣẹ̀lẹ̀ kan tó jẹ́ wípé a lè gbàgbé nínú ẹ̀ ni. Kódà nígbà tí bàbá Akíntóyè náà tí wọ́n ń sọ̀rọ̀ ní àná, a mẹ́nubà lọ́pọ̀lọpọ̀ torí pé ẹni tí wọ́n dárúkọ yìí ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ èyí lómi bẹ́ẹ̀ ó náà ní kíní kan, ṣùgbọ́n Kẹ́hìndé Tolúwaṣẹ màmá jẹ́ ẹni tí wọ́n súnmọ́ wa gan. Àwọn ní backbone Omoboriowo Empowerment Foundation. Àwọn ní backbone Ayékòótọ́ Security Service Limited. Àtijọ́ ń bọ̀ ọjọ́ ti pẹ́. Wọ́n sì fi ara mọ́ Yorùbá lọ́pọ̀lọpọ̀. Ó ńlá ṣe máa ń sọ wípé ẹni tí jàǹbá ó kàn tí ó kàn wá kọ́lọ́run má jẹ́ kó kàn án, torí pé eléyìí tó ṣẹlẹ̀ yìí ó mì wá gbìgbì, ó mì gbogbo wa gbìgbì, ṣùgbọ́n Ọlọ́run ọba máa mú lódodo ṣáájú ọjọ́ ibi ẹ̀, torí pé lára àwọn ìwádìí àtúntà ṣe ni pé bọ́dà wa Kẹ́hìndé wọ́n kó nílùú òkè òkun láti lọ bá ọ̀rẹ́ wọn ṣe ìgbéyàwó ní ìlú Ghana. Wọ́n sì ní káwọn fẹsẹ̀ kan yà sí ilé. Ẹ mọ̀ òtútù ọ̀hún a máa wò pé jẹ́ ń lọ ṣe fàájì díẹ̀ ní Nàìjíríà láàrin ọjọ́ méjì ọjọ́ mẹ́ta kí n tó padà sí ìlú òkè òkun. Ṣùgbọ́n nígbà tí ìṣẹ̀lẹ̀ Ọlọ́run fún wọn ní okun àtagbára láti lè jáde kúrò nínú ilé ọ̀hún, torí pé tí ẹ bá rí ilé ọ̀hún ẹ rò pé kò yẹ kẹ́nìyàn kan yé ń bẹ́ẹ̀ ni, torí a ní fídíò ẹ̀ lọ́wọ́. Àmọ́ Ọlọ́run ní kí wọ́n jáde kúrò ń bẹ́ẹ̀. Ṣùgbọ́n gẹ́gẹ́ bí èèyàn tí Ọlọ́run dá Kẹ́hìndé Tolúwaṣẹ, ó jẹ́ ẹni tí máa ń ṣàánú lọ́pọ̀lọpọ̀. Ó jẹ́ ẹni tí kì í fẹ́ rí kéèyàn ó béèrè fún ìrànlọ́wọ́ níbi tó ti ń sá lọ. Ó ló ti gbọ́ táwọn kan sọ pé dákun ẹ gbà wá, help. Eléyìí ló tajú wẹ̀yìn ló padà wípé ẹnikẹ́ni tí ìwọ bá nípa láti ṣe ìrànlọ́wọ́ fún, òun náà lẹ́ni kejì ẹ o. Ìrànlọ́wọ́ òun náà ni Kẹ́hìndé fẹ́ ṣe. Wọ́n sọ pé kí Elédùmarè kó má jẹ́ kí oore kó dìbì mọ́ wa lọ́wọ́. Àwọn tó ń pariwo help yìí ó ní Kẹ́hìndé fẹ́ yọ kó tó di wípé ilé ó padà wá wọlé àwọn náà lórí mọ́lẹ̀. Àti àwọn tí wọ́n fẹ́ help èèyàn àtàwọn tí wọ́n help èèyàn gbogbo wọn pátá ni wọn ò padà yé. Kí irú ìjọba bẹ́ẹ̀ wá bọ́ta kó wá máa sọ wípé èèyàn méjì ló kú. Àrọ́mọdọ́mọ tí wọ́n náà jẹnu ìyà yìí. Ó dẹ̀ dá mi lójú wípé ìjọba ìpínlẹ̀ Ọ̀yọ́ mọ̀ sí máìnì tí wọ́n ń wà níbẹ̀, torí wípé November 11, 2023, the Daily newspaper said Oyo State government seal illegal mining in Oyo State, which shows that the same governor náà ló wà ńbẹ̀ at that particular time. Ó dẹ̀ mọ̀ pé illegal mining ni. So for him to come out within 5 hours or 6 hours of that incident and said illegal mining, tí ìbá ṣe pé àní ìjọba ó yẹ kó ti máa káwọ́ pọ̀nyìn ru ìjọba yìí. Ṣùgbọ́n immunity power tí wọ́n ń lò jẹ́ kí agbára kó lè ká wọn. àmọ́ tí agbára ènìyàn ò bá ká wọn agbára Ọlọ́run ọba ká wọn. So arọ gbogbo ẹbí lójú wípé bí Ọlọ́run ọba Elédùmarè bó ṣe kádàrá, because tí wọn ò bá travel láti ìlú òkè òkun wá sí Nàìjíríà kò ní ṣẹlẹ̀, ṣùgbọ́n àkókò wọn ti tó ni. Torí táwọn àkókò wọn ò bá tó, ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ àwọn nǹkan kan ló ṣẹlẹ̀ ṣáájú kí wọ́n tó lọ. Ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ àwọn nǹkan ló wáyé ṣáájú kí wọ́n tó lọ táwọn gan sì mọ̀. Ṣùgbọ́n tí ò bá ṣe ẹ̀dá ò gbọ́n mọ́. Látàrí ìdí èyí àtúnbára wa kẹ́dùn, abára wa kẹ́dùn. Ọ̀rọ̀ yìí dùn bàbá Akíntóyè gan gbà tá sọ fún wọn, ṣùgbọ́n abára wa kẹ́dùn. Gbogbo Olódùmarè yóò rọ̀ wá lójú. Gbogbo àwọn tí wọ́n sì pàdánù ẹ̀mí wọn níbẹ̀, Olódùmarè yóò bá wa tẹ́ wọn sí ẹ̀fẹ̀, torí pé Ọlọ́run ọba nìkan la lè fa ìjọba yìí, la lè fà lé lọ́wọ́. Ẹ̀yin wa tí ẹ̀ ń wò wá lónìí, àdúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ yín, ẹ bá wa ṣètò, ẹ bá wa láìkẹ́. Ibí yìí òun náà ni a ó fi àdàgbà ètò tòní rọ̀ sí ìmọ̀ràn àgbà eléyìí tí bàbá wa Báṣegùn Dr. Chief Olúṣọlá Òní tí wọ́n jẹ́ àlejò wa. Àwọn ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ ọ̀rọ̀ ni wọ́n ti sọ, àmọ́ ní agbára Ọlọ́run ní another episode wa a ò ní ṣaláìmọ́ sọ̀rọ̀ nípa ọ̀rọ̀ tí Lord Macaulay tó sọ nígbà tó ń address British Parliament, ìyẹn ní February 2nd 1835. Òun náà ni àwọn nǹkan tí a tún gbàgbà lérè, torí ó jọmọ́ pé Yorùbá kí ni tó ń ṣe wá, báwo la ṣe bára wa ń bì, religion issue àti àwọn ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ nǹkan míì. Òun náà ni ó kó sí inú culture issue, heritage issue olówó wà nínú ọ̀rọ̀ tí Lord Macaulay tó kọ sí British Parliament ní February 2nd 1835. Tó bá di another episode náà ni a ó máa yànnà náà àwọn ọ̀rọ̀ yìí. Ẹ̀yin wo ni yẹn ṣọlọ́ bẹ̀ ṣẹ́yìn tẹ́ bá jẹ́ ẹ̀kọ́ àbínú. Ibí yìí òun náà ni a ó máa fi àdàgbé tó nírò sí títí di ọjọ́ míì tèmi àti yóò máa pàdé. Eré àti ayọ̀ ìdùnnú òun náà ni yóò máa jẹ́ ti ẹnìkọ̀ọ̀kan wa. Àmọ́ ṣáájú kí a tó kúrò lónìí, ẹ máa pé oṣù tó ń bọ̀ òun náà ni Yorùbá Youth website yóò máa gbéra sọ ní ọjọ́ 10 oṣù kejì ọdún tàwa yìí. Òun náà ni wọ́n ṣe launching Yorùbá Youth website ọ̀hún. Ẹ jẹ́ ká sá débi ìpolówó ọjà wọn náà kó tó di pé a ó máa lọ.
Ẹ káàbọ̀ sà, ṣé dáadáa lẹ dé? Gbogbo ará òkè ọ̀hún kọ́.
àbúrò dáadáa ni o, ẹ̀yin náà ńkọ́, ṣé mo bá yín dáadáa?
Sẹ́ẹ̀rì ẹ̀gbọ́n, ó tiẹ̀ dá. Eléyìí tẹ́ ẹ wá yìí, tẹ́ ẹ bá ti ń lọ, a ó jọ mọ́ lọ padà ni o. Ẹ wò ó ká mọ́ purọ́, ìlú yìí ò dáa. Gbogbo ẹ̀ sì ti sú mi pátápátá.
àbúrò kò rọrùn bó ṣe wí yẹn o, àti wípé orí bẹ́ẹ̀ kọ́ ni ògùn orí fífọ́, sísá lọ kọ́ ni ọ̀nà àbáyọ, bí kì í ṣe wípé kí àwa ọ̀dọ́ Yorùbá ká parapọ̀ sọ̀mọ̀dọ̀ kan láti gbára wa kúrò lóko ẹrú.
Thank you very much for
orí bíbẹ́ kọ́ lóògùn orí fífọ́ mo gbà láfi
listening to the
ṣàgbékalẹ̀
broadcast
Yorùbá Nation
and
Youth
thank you.
website fún gbogbo
Yes.
ọ̀dọ́ Yorùbá pé ká darapọ̀ ṣọ̀kan lágbàáyé. Ní báyìí
Okay.
ìforúkọsílẹ̀
So,
ti ń lọ lọ́wọ́lọ́wọ́, a sì ti ń wá
we'll
àwọn
see each
aṣojú
other again
jákèjádò
on
àgbáyé
Thursday.
èyí tó lóyìnbó ń pè ní
Lágbára Ọlọ́run.
coordinator Yorùbá Nation Youth website. Láìpẹ́ láì jìnnà la ó bẹ̀rẹ̀ ètò ìdánilẹ́kọ̀ọ́ nípa bá a ṣe ń ṣe àti bá a ṣe ń lo
Okay.
drone. Ó ń tàwọn ọ̀kan òjọ̀kan ètò empowerment
All right,
gbogbo
o.
tá a ti là kalẹ̀. Bí
Ó
ètò
dàárọ̀.
iṣẹ́ àgbẹ̀, ìrànwọ́ fún àwọn
Kásùn rè o.
ọmọlé ìwé tó kù díẹ̀ fún káàtó, ètò ìkọ́sẹ́ ọ̀fẹ́ tó ń tirisẹ́ ìgbàlódé táwọn fi ṣiṣẹ́ lọ́fẹ̀ẹ́, ti ká ran àwọn ọmọ tó bá lẹ́bùn tá a mọ̀ sí talent lọ́wọ́. Gbogbo ẹ̀ fún ìrọ̀rùn àwa ara wa láti darapọ̀ mọ́ Yorùbá Nation Youth, tàbí tẹ́ bá fẹ́ jẹ́ coordinators nílùú tẹ́ bá wà bíi Europe, Asia, Canada, America, Australia. Bó sì ṣẹgbẹ́ yín nìkan tẹ́ bá fẹ́ fi ràn wá lọ́wọ́, bí ilẹ̀ tá a fi ń dákọ nílé, ọ́fíìsì nílùú tẹ́ bá wà, owó àti bẹ́ẹ̀ bẹ́ẹ̀ lọ. Ẹ kàn sí wa látòrí www.yorubanationyouthwebsite.org. Bákan náà ni ẹ lè pè tàbí kẹ́ WhatsApp Homeland Coordinator lórí +234 703 717 3355 tàbí kẹ́pẹ́ Prophet Ayọ̀délé Ológunlolúwa tí wọ́n jẹ́ Yorùbá Nation Youth Leader in all diaspora lórí +1 803 846 1116. Pẹ̀lú Yorùbá Nation Youth website yìí, ìrọ̀rùn ti dé.
Ẹ káàbọ̀.
Lẹ́lẹ́ ni yóò máa fẹ́, lẹ́lẹ́ ni yóò máa fẹ́, lẹ́lẹ́ ni yóò máa fẹ́, lẹ́lẹ́ ni yóò máa fẹ́. Àsíá o, Yorùbá Nation, lẹ́lẹ́ ni yóò máa fẹ́. Àjò ò lè jù, onílé má relé.
Thank you for watching. If you're new to this channel, consider subscribing so you won't miss out any of our latest video.